Poor girl delivers wrong coffee. Never thought he's billionaire CEO who falls for her. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of espresso machines and clinking cups filled the morning air inside a bustling New York coffee shop. Steam curled above the counter as baristas shouted orders over the noise. Lena Torres balanced 2 drink trays in her hands, her name tag crooked and her apron stained from the morning rush. Her sneakers were damp from the rain outside, and the smell of roasted beans clung to her jacket. "Order 47, she murmured, scanning the scribbled note. A large latte, no sugar, for the client in the next building. She hurried out into the drizzle, clutching the tray tight as the wind whipped across the avenue. The glass doors of the Coltech building slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a sleek marble lobby and polished elevators that reflected the glow of city lights. Lena's heart thudded. Everyone here looked important: sharp suits, polished shoes, confidence in every stride. She felt like a smudge in a painting of perfection. Still, she approached the receptionist, holding up the coffee cup marked Latte #47. The woman barely looked up. "Meeting room 3, top floor." Lena thanked her, voice trembling, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the mirror: tired eyes, messy bun, rain-speckled sleeves. She whispered to herself, "You can do this." The elevator chimed. The hallway upstairs smelled faintly of citrus and money. Through the glass wall ahead, a conference room buzzed with quiet conversation. One man sat alone near the end of the table, sleeves rolled, dark hair slightly tousled, scrolling through something on his tablet. He looked too young, too calm to be one of those intimidating executives. Lena hesitated, then pushed the door open. "Hi, latte no sugar for Mr. Stevens?" she said brightly. The man looked up, confused for a heartbeat, then smiled. "That must be me," he said, taking the cup. "Thank you." Relief washed over her. She set the drink down, unaware of the dozen eyes watching her from the glass wall. "Enjoy your coffee," she said quickly, spinning on her heel. Behind her, Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO of Coltech, raised the cup to his lips. The first sip made him pause: too creamy, too mild. Definitely not his usual black coffee. But the word written in neat marker near the rim made him smile. "Breathe." He looked up through the glass, watching the girl dash through the rain, her messy bun bouncing as she ran. He turned the cup in his hands, studying the careful lettering, the warmth of it in contrast with his cold, calculated world. Ethan's assistant hurried in, whispering, "Sir, your usual coffee order got delayed. Should I?" He held up a hand, still looking at the door where she had disappeared. "No need," he said quietly. "This one's fine." Outside, Lena darted across the street, soaking wet, her heart racing. She had no idea she had just handed the wrong coffee to one of the most powerful men in the city, or that her small mistake had already begun to change both of their lives forever. The following morning, sunlight slipped through the narrow window of Lena's small Brooklyn apartment. The sound of traffic hummed outside, mixed with the hiss of a leaking radiator. She sat cross-legged on her worn couch, sketchbook balanced on her knees, her mind drifting back to the wrong coffee delivery. She laughed to herself, embarrassed. Of all the mistakes she had made this week, that one would top the list. Somewhere in a glass tower, a man had probably wondered why his latte had a word like "breathe" written on it. She shook her head and returned to her sketches. Lines of coffee cups, street corners, rainy sidewalks filled the page. Despite her exhaustion, art was still her way of catching her breath. Across the river, in the Coltech headquarters, Ethan Cole sat in his office overlooking the city. The same coffee cup rested on his desk beside a stack of reports. The word "breathe" stared up at him in thick black marker. He turned it slowly, remembering the girl's nervous smile, the rain dripping from her sleeves. His assistant, Claire, entered with her usual calm efficiency. "Your meeting with the finance board is at 10, sir," she said. Ethan nodded but did not move. "Claire," he said after a pause, "do you ever think about what makes people happy?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Happy, sir?" "Yes. Not success, not goals. Just simple happiness." Claire smiled faintly. "For most people, it is the small things. Maybe a cup of coffee with the right word on it." He looked at the cup again and smiled. "Maybe you are right." Later that afternoon, Lena finished her shift at the cafe. Her manager, a tired man with a kind face, handed her a stack of orders. "Another delivery for the Coltech building," he said. Her stomach fluttered. "Again? They asked for you by name," he replied. "Apparently you made quite the impression." Lena frowned, confused, but nodded and grabbed the delivery bag. When she arrived, she expected a quick handoff at the front desk. Instead, the receptionist smiled politely and said, "Mr. Cole will see you himself." Her heart skipped. She stepped into the elevator, her palms sweating. The doors opened to the top floor, and there he was, Ethan, the man from the conference room, standing near the window with that same calm presence. He turned, eyes warm with recognition. "Lena, right?" he asked, surprising her by remembering her name. "I wanted to thank you for the coffee. It was different." "Different how?" she asked carefully. "It reminded me to breathe," he said simply. "And that has been rare lately." She laughed softly, trying to hide her nervousness. "Well, I am glad my mistake had some use." "Mistake?" he echoed. "I think it was perfect timing." She smiled, unsure what to say. "Would you like to sit for a minute? I promise not to mix up your order this time," he said with a hint of humor. She hesitated, then sat across from him. The office was quiet except for the hum of the city below. "So, Lena," he asked, "what do you really do when you are not rescuing executives with caffeine?" She laughed again, relaxing a little. "I am studying design at night. Someday I want to open a small cafe where people can draw, read, just breathe." Ethan's gaze softened. "That sounds peaceful." "It sounds impossible most days," she admitted. "But I keep sketching it, hoping that if I can see it, maybe I can reach it." He nodded, impressed by her sincerity. When she left, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened with late sunlight. Ethan stood at the window long after she was gone, holding his coffee cup. For the first time in years, the word written on it felt like more than ink. It felt like a reminder that life, no matter how structured, still had room for chance, and perhaps for something even rarer than success. The next few weeks slipped by quietly, but something had changed for both of them. Every morning, Ethan found himself stopping by the cafe instead of sending his assistant. He said it was because the coffee tasted better when Lena made it, but the truth was more complicated. He liked the way she smiled even when she was tired, how she greeted every customer as if they mattered. Lena, meanwhile, never imagined the man who came in for his usual was the same one who owned half the block. To her, he was just Ethan, the polite tech guy who sometimes asked about her sketches. One chilly Thursday, she handed him his drink, noticing he had no umbrella. "It is pouring outside," she said. "You will be drenched before you reach your car." He laughed softly. "Maybe I will survive. Or maybe you can sell me one of those paper cups as a shield." She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks warmed. "Next time I will add an umbrella fee." He smiled at her playfulness and took the cup. The word breathe was still written on it, though she did not realize he had asked the barista to keep that message. That evening, Ethan sat in his penthouse, the skyline stretching wide beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. He had spent years building an empire, chasing numbers, acquisitions, and respect. Yet lately, his thoughts wandered to a girl with coffee stains on her apron and dreams in her eyes. He picked up his phone, hesitated, and set it back down. He could not explain why it mattered so much to keep seeing her, only that it made the endless meetings and emails feel human again. Across town, Lena's apartment was filled with the smell of cheap instant noodles and the faint sound of jazz playing from her old laptop. Her roommate Jenny peeked from behind her own sketchbook. "You have been smiling at your phone for 10 minutes, Jenny said. "Do not tell me the tech guy finally asked for your number." Lena threw a pillow at her. "He is just a customer, Jenny." "Right," Jenny teased. "A customer who comes every morning, tips double, and remembers your name." "Sure." Lena laughed but said nothing. The truth was, Ethan's visits had become the best part of her day. The way he listened, the questions he asked about her art, the way he seemed genuinely curious about her world, all of it made her feel seen. A week later, she walked into the cafe to find Ethan waiting at the counter, holding 2 cups. "I thought I would try making it this time," he said, handing her one. "Do not judge the foam." She took a sip, eyebrows lifting in surprise. "It is not terrible," she admitted. "I will take that as high praise," he said, laughing. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. There is an art gallery near the river. They are hosting a community exhibit tomorrow. Would you come with me?" Her eyes widened. "Me? Why?" "Because I think you should see how good artists start," he said simply. She hesitated, unsure if it was a date or an act of kindness, but something in his tone felt genuine. The next evening, the gallery glowed under soft lights, the river outside reflecting gold. Lena stood beside Ethan, awe in her eyes as she looked at the paintings. "I forgot what it feels like to be around art," she whispered. He watched her more than the canvases, seeing how her expression softened under the lights. "You belong here," he said quietly. She glanced at him, her heart catching for a moment. "Maybe someday," she said. When he dropped her off later, she turned to thank him. "For what?" he asked. "For reminding me that dreams still matter." He wanted to tell her that she had reminded him too that life was more than deals and deadlines, but instead, he just smiled. As she stepped out into the night, the streetlight caught the raindrops in her hair. Ethan watched until she disappeared into the glow, the faint scent of coffee still lingering between them like a promise neither of them could name yet. The following weekend arrived with the first hint of winter in the air. The cafe was quieter than usual, the hum of the espresso machine blending with soft jazz from the radio. Lena wiped down the counter, lost in thought. Ethan had not come by for 2 days, and though she told herself it did not matter, she caught herself glancing at the door every few minutes. Just as she turned away, the bell above the entrance chimed. Ethan stood there, wearing a simple gray coat, his hair slightly messy from the wind. "Miss me?" he teased, his tone light but his eyes warm. She smiled, trying not to show relief. "I thought you forgot how to drink coffee." "Impossible," he said. "I have just been trapped in meetings. But I brought something." He placed a small paper bag on the counter. Inside was a set of new paintbrushes and a tiny sketchbook wrapped with twine. "For your calf dream," he said quietly. "You said you draw on napkins. Now you can draw on something that will last." She stared at the gift, her throat tightening. "Ethan, you did not have to. I wanted to," he interrupted gently. "You remind me of someone who still believes things can get better." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt fragile but real. "Thank you," she said finally. "Really?" He nodded. "There is a winter charity event next week at the Metropolitan Grand. Coltech is one of the sponsors. Would you come? I could use some company who does not talk about stock prices." Lena hesitated. "I cannot afford that kind of place." He smiled. "You will not have to. Consider it a night off from coffee duty." After a long pause, she agreed. The night of the gala, snow fell softly over Manhattan, dusting the streets in white. Lena stood outside the hotel entrance, wearing a simple navy dress borrowed from Jenny. She felt completely out of place among the glittering gowns and tuxedos. But when Ethan appeared, her nerves eased. "You look perfect," he said sincerely, offering his arm. Inside, chandeliers glowed like stars, and laughter echoed off marble walls. Ethan guided her through the crowd with quiet confidence, introducing her to people as his guest. For a while, she forgot who she was supposed to be. They laughed over tiny appetizers, shared stories, and when the band began to play, he asked, "Do you dance?" She shook her head. "Not in these shoes." "Then let us call it swaying," he said, and she laughed as he led her to the edge of the floor. Under the soft lights, surrounded by people who did not know her name, Lena felt something shift. For the first time, she saw Ethan not as a customer, not as a man in a suit, but as someone who made the world feel lighter. Later, as they stepped outside for air, snowflakes caught in her hair. "This feels unreal," she whispered. "Maybe that is how you know it is real," he replied. She looked at him, uncertain, and he smiled. "You know," he said softly, "I have not told you what I actually do at Coltech." She laughed nervously. "What, are you secretly the janitor?" He hesitated, his gaze thoughtful. "Something like that." Before she could ask, a voice called his name sharply from behind them. A tall man in a tailored suit approached. "Ethan, the board wants a word before your speech." Lena blinked. "Speech?" Ethan's expression flickered. "I will explain," he said quickly. But the man interrupted. "Mr. Cole, they are waiting." The title hit her like a cold wave. "Mr. Cole." She turned to him slowly. "Cole," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "As in Coltech?" His silence was answer enough. The music from inside swelled as realization crossed her face. "You are the CEO," she said, disbelief breaking through her tone. He stepped forward. "Lena, please, it is not what you think." But she stepped back, her heart pounding. "You let me believe you were just some guy from a startup. I wanted you to know me before the company, before the title," he said, his voice low, pleading. "You lied," she whispered. The hurt in her voice was sharper than any accusation. She turned, walking away into the falling snow. Ethan stood frozen in place, watching her disappear into the crowd, the warmth of the evening collapsing into cold silence. For the first time in years, the man who had everything realized he might have just lost the only thing that truly mattered. The snow kept falling that night as Lena walked away from the hotel, her heels sinking into the slush, her breath trembling in the cold air. Each step echoed the sting of what she had just learned. The man who had laughed with her, who had listened to her stories about coffee and art, was not just Ethan, the kind stranger who made her believe in simple things again. He was Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO of Coltech, a name printed on half the billboards in the city. She reached the subway station and sat on the empty bench, hugging her coat tight. The trains roared past, but she could not bring herself to move. She felt small, foolish, and out of place in a world that had never been hers. Across town, Ethan stood on the hotel steps long after she had gone. Snowflakes melted on his shoulders, but he barely noticed. Inside, the board waited for him to deliver his annual speech. But all he could think of was the look in her eyes when she realized the truth. When he finally walked back inside, he spoke the required words, thanked the sponsors, smiled for the cameras, but his voice was hollow. That night, he returned to his penthouse and set the paper cup on his desk. The word breathe stared up at him again, now faint and smudged, but still legible. He whispered, "You told me to breathe, and I forgot how." For the next few days, Lena buried herself in work, avoiding any mention of Coltech or the man behind it. Her co-worker Jenny noticed her silence but did not push. One evening, as Lena was closing the cafe, she found a plain envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a small card that read, "Please come to the Riverside Gallery this Friday. There is something I need to show you. EC." She hesitated for a long time, turning the card over in her hand. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to protect herself from more disappointment. But curiosity tugged stronger than anger. When Friday arrived, she went. The gallery was quiet, washed in soft light, with the faint scent of paint and wood polish in the air. She walked slowly between the exhibits until she reached the final room. There, in the center, stood Ethan. He looked different, no suit, no polished image, just a man waiting, uncertainty in his eyes. Around him, the walls were filled with framed sketches, her sketches. The ones she had thrown away, left on calf napkins, even the one from her old sketchbook she thought she had lost. "What is this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Your work?" he said softly. "I had them collected from the calf. You once told me you dreamed of having a place where people could breathe. So I made one for you." She turned slowly, eyes wide as she read the sign above the entrance. "Breathe, an exhibition inspired by Lena Torres." "You cannot just fix this with money," she said, though her voice faltered. "I know," he replied. "This is not about money. It is about honesty. I should have told you who I was. I was afraid you would see the company and not the person." He took a step closer. "You reminded me that life is not about numbers or deals. It is about connection, about doing something that means something." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away. "You really think a few drawings on a wall can make up for lying to me?" "No," he said quietly. "But maybe they can remind you that what we shared was real, even if I failed to be." Silence filled the room. Finally, Lena looked around once more, at the drawings that had come from her hands but meant something more now. "You kept every one of them," she said softly. "Every single one," he replied, "because they reminded me to breathe." She closed her eyes, the fight in her voice softening. "I do not know if I can forgive you yet." "Then let me earn it," he said simply. "No titles, no lies, just me." The lights in the gallery flickered against the glass, reflecting both of them standing among the two people from different worlds, each learning what it truly meant to start over. And for the first time in a long while, Lena exhaled, not in anger or sorrow, but in quiet acceptance. Weeks passed after the gallery night, and the city slowly traded snow for the soft drizzle of early spring. The exhibit called Breathe became a quiet success. Visitors stopped to read the note at the entrance that said, "Art from small hands can change a big world." Lena refused Ethan's offer to buy the rights or turn it into a corporate partnership, but she continued to visit the gallery on weekends, watching people stand before her sketches with the same wonder she had once felt for life itself. She never saw Ethan there, but somehow his presence lingered in the air like the faint scent of coffee that never quite faded. One rainy afternoon, she found herself sketching by the river. Drops of water splattered across the page as she drew the skyline reflected in the gray waves. A familiar voice spoke behind her. "You still forget your umbrella." She turned quickly. Ethan stood a few steps away, holding one above his head, rain clinging to his coat. She wanted to be angry, but instead she felt that strange calm again. "Maybe I like the rain," she said quietly. He smiled. "Or maybe you still like proving me wrong." For a moment they just looked at each other, the sound of the river filling the silence. "Why are you here, Ethan?" she asked. "To see if the artist of Breathe still believes in second chances," he said. She shook her head, though a faint smile touched her lips. "You are relentless. Only when it matters," he said. They began walking under the same umbrella, their steps slow against the wet pavement. "So what happens now?" she asked after a while. "Now I start showing you who I really am," he replied. "No boardrooms, no headlines. Just coffee, maybe with too much sugar this time." She laughed softly. That might be a start. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the distance between them began to fade. Ethan would stop by the cafe after work, sitting quietly while Lena closed up. Sometimes they would talk, sometimes they would not. There was comfort in the silence that no longer felt heavy. One evening, as the sky burned orange over the city, Ethan watched her sketch a new design for a cafe sign. "You are still chasing it," he said. "That dream of your own place." "Always," she said. "But dreams take time and money." "Then let me invest," he offered gently. "Not as a CEO, as someone who believes in you." She hesitated. "And if it fails?" "Then we try again," he said simply. "Because failure is not falling, it is never trying." She looked up at him, the sincerity in his voice steady and unguarded. It was the same tone he used when he first said breathe. That night, Lena dreamed of her cafe again, not as a faraway wish, but as something real, warm, filled with light and laughter. The next morning she found an envelope taped to the cafe door. Inside was a hand-drawn sketch of her dream cafe, signed at the bottom with his initials and a simple message, "For us." Beneath it was a key. Confused, she followed the address written on the back to a small corner space downtown. The windows were dusty, the sign above faded, but inside was a blank canvas waiting to be filled. Ethan stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "It is not a gift," he said before she could speak. "It is a partnership. 50-50. You bring the heart, I bring the walls." She laughed through tears. "You really think this can work?" "I know it can," he said. "Because it already did once, on the day you handed me the wrong coffee." She took the cup from his hand, the word breathe written across it again, fresh and bold. For the first time since that cold night outside the gala, she allowed herself to smile without fear. Together they stood in the empty room, rain tapping gently on the windows, as if the city itself was applauding the quiet miracle that had brought them back to this moment. Months passed, and the small cafe took shape piece by piece, the scent of fresh paint mixed with roasted beans and new beginnings. Lena named it exactly what it was meant to be, Breathe Cafe. The walls were lined with her sketches, framed simply, while sunlight streamed through tall windows. Ethan kept his word, visiting often but never interfering. He worked quietly in the corner, laptop open, watching her move through the space with a light that made the world outside seem slower. When the grand opening finally came, the line stretched down the block. Local artists displayed their work on the walls, and a street musician played guitar near the door. Lena moved between tables, greeting customers, the same nervous energy she once carried now replaced by confidence. Ethan stood near the counter, unseen by most, his expression soft with pride. Later that night, when the last customer left, Lena locked the door and leaned against the counter, exhausted but glowing. "You did it," Ethan said. "We did it," she corrected with a tired smile. He laughed. "You have no idea how proud I am of you." "You should be," she said, "for staying out of my way." They shared a quiet laugh. For the first time, there was no tension, no mask, just comfort. The next week, however, a storm neither of them expected arrived. One morning, headlines exploded across business networks. Coltech faces internal scandal over corporate misuse. Ethan's face appeared beside the bold letters. Lena read the article at the cafe, her heart tightening. Reporters accused his company of using charitable foundations as tax shelters, twisting everything he had built. That afternoon, the cafe door opened, and Ethan stepped inside, the weight of the world in his eyes. "Tell me it is not true," she said softly. "It is complicated," he answered. "I am being framed by a board member trying to take over control. The foundation we built, the one that funded your gallery, it is clean. I swear it." She searched his face, torn between belief and fear. "Ethan, this cafe has your name on half the papers. If this goes wrong, I will not let it touch you," he said firmly. "I can fix this." "How?" she asked. By telling the truth, he said. The following days were chaos. Cameras followed him everywhere. Commentators debated his guilt. Lena avoided interviews, focusing on the calf. Still, people whispered. A few customers stopped coming. Yet each night, Ethan showed up, sometimes silent, sometimes just holding her hand, as if her presence anchored him. One evening as they closed up, he said quietly, "I used to think success meant control. Now I know it means courage." She looked at him, tired but certain. "Then be brave. The truth will catch up," he smiled faintly. "You really believe that?" "I have to," she said. "You taught me to." That night, Ethan drafted a public statement, exposing the internal corruption, risking his career to clear his name and everyone else. When he pressed send, he looked up at the skyline and whispered her word back to himself, "Breathe." The next few weeks tested everything Ethan and Lena had built. His confession to the media set the city ablaze. Coltech's stock fell overnight, but for the first time people saw the truth behind the headlines. Ethan's public statement named the board member responsible, providing documents that proved the misuse of charity funds had been orchestrated to remove him. It was a bold move that risked everything he owned. Reporters swarmed the cafe that morning, hoping for Lena's comment, but she refused to speak. She simply brewed coffee and kept her head down. "The truth speaks louder than noise," she told Jenny. That night, Ethan came in looking exhausted, his coat soaked from the rain. The cafe was empty except for a few lingering customers. Lena poured him a cup before he even asked. "Rough day?" she asked softly. "It feels like the longest one of my life," he admitted, "but I did what was right." "Then that is what matters," she said. He looked around the cafe, at the art on the walls, at her steady hands. "Do you regret any of this?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "If you mean the coffee, yes. I spilled milk twice today, but if you mean us, no, I do not." The warmth in her tone softened something inside him. For the first time in weeks, he felt peace. 2 days later, the news broke that the investigation had cleared Ethan completely. The corrupt board member was arrested for embezzlement, and Coltech's employees rallied behind their real leader. The media turned from accusation to admiration, praising Ethan's integrity. But when reporters asked where he was, no one could find him. Lena found out first. One evening, she walked into the cafe and saw him sitting at their favorite corner table, quietly reading. He looked up and smiled as if nothing else in the world mattered. "You disappeared," she said. "I needed air," he replied. "And coffee." "So this is your victory celebration?" she teased. "No," he said, his voice warm. "This is where I wanted to start again." He stood, taking a folded paper from his pocket and placing it on the counter. It was a new contract, simple, handwritten. "Partnership renewal," he said. 50-50, no titles, just us. She looked at the paper, then at him. "You really think I am signing another contract with you?" "It is not about business," he said. "It is about trust and love, because both need commitment." Her eyes softened. "You never stop with the grand gestures, do you?" "Only for the right person," he said quietly. She signed with a smile, handing him the pen. "Then this time, it is not just a signature," she said. "It is a promise." Ethan reached across the counter, covering her hand with his. "You once told me dreams take time. I think ours just arrived on schedule." Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and the glow from the cafe windows spilled onto the street like a beacon. Inside, 2 people stood together, no longer defined by mistakes or titles, but by the quiet strength that had carried them through it all. A year later, Breathe Cafe had become more than just a coffee shop. It was a haven, a place where students studied, artists painted, and strangers found warmth on cold days. The walls still carried Lena's sketches, now joined by pieces from young local artists she had invited to display their work. Every corner told a story, and at the heart of it all stood Ethan, no longer the distant CEO, but a man who had learned the quiet power of humility. On a crisp autumn morning, he arrived early before opening, carrying 2 cups of coffee just the way she liked it, extra milk, no sugar. Lena was arranging flowers on the tables, her hair tied loosely, a faint smile on her lips as sunlight poured through the windows. "You are here early," she said without looking up. "Old habits," he replied, placing 1 cup beside her. She took a sip and smiled. "Perfect as always." "Good," he said, reaching into his pocket. "Because I wanted everything to be perfect today." He pulled out a small box and set it between them. For a moment, she froze, eyes wide. "Ethan, you once said mistakes can lead to miracles," he said softly. "That wrong coffee brought me to you, and every day since has reminded me why it was the best mistake of my life. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring engraved with one word, breathe. Lena Torres, he said, voice steady but filled with emotion. Will you marry me? Tears welled in her eyes, but her laughter broke through first. Only if you promise to never get my order wrong again. He smiled. Deal. She nodded, whispering, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and applause erupted from the small group of regulars who had been secretly watching from behind the counter. Jenny shouted, finally! And everyone laughed. Ethan leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. You made me believe in something I never understood before, he said quietly. That love is not about perfection, it is about presence. She smiled through her tears. And coffee, she added. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the small miracle unfolding inside a cafe, built on a single mistake. Later that evening, after the celebration quieted down, they stood outside the shop, the sign glowing softly above them. Lena traced the letters of the word breathe with her fingers. Do you ever think about that day? She asked. Every single one, he said. It started with a wrong order and ended right where it was always supposed to. She looked up at him, the streetlights reflecting in her eyes. Then, let us never forget to breathe. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders as they walked down the sidewalk together, the neon light of the cafe fading behind them. The city around them buzzed with noise and motion, but in that quiet moment, they knew they had already found everything they needed. The camera of life might have zoomed out, but their story rooted in kindness, honesty, and the courage to start again would keep playing in every heartbeat that followed.